There are moments when a man starts giving up long before he actually leaves, not because he stopped caring. Sometimes, because caring began to hurt more than walking away. It happens quietly. You still answer her messages. You still smile when people ask about the relationship. You still tell yourself you're just tired, but deep inside, something has already begun to close. And maybe that's why you're here, because a small part of you is wondering whether you're about to lose someone you still love, or whether you've already lost yourself trying to keep her. If you've ever felt that conflict, stay with me. And if these conversations help you see your own heart a little more clearly, consider subscribing. There are some things we rarely say out loud, and this is one of the few places where we can. Most people think relationships end after one big fight. Often, they end after hundreds of tiny moments that nobody notices. She asks if you're okay. You say you're just tired. She believes you. But she doesn't realize you were hoping she'd ask one more time, not because you wanted attention, because you wanted to feel seen. It's strange, isn't it? How grown men can carry disappointments that sound so small. Yet those small moments become heavy. Not overnight, over months, sometimes years. I've spoken with men who insisted they didn't need much from a relationship. I don't ask for anything. That's what they said. Then we talked a little longer, and eventually another sentence appeared. I just wanted her to notice. Notice that they stopped laughing as much. Notice they stayed awake later than usual. Notice they weren't talking about work anymore. Notice they were becoming quieter. There is something heartbreaking about feeling invisible beside someone who once looked at you as if nobody else existed. But there's another side almost nobody talks about. Sometimes she notices everything. She sees your silence. She feels your distance. She even worries about losing you. She simply doesn't know what your silence means. Many people think silence is clear. It isn't. Silence is like an empty room. Everyone walks into it carrying their own interpretation. You think you're protecting the relationship by hiding your frustration. She thinks you've stopped caring. Neither of you intended that misunderstanding, yet both begin reacting to a story that isn't actually true. And little by little, love becomes crowded with assumptions. There's a scene I've watched unfold in different forms over the years. A couple is driving home. The radio is playing softly. Neither of them speaks. He's replaying something she said 3 days ago. She keeps wondering why he hasn't held her hand recently. They both feel lonely. They're sitting 18 inches apart. That's the painful part. Distance isn't always measured in miles. Sometimes it's measured in conversations that never happened. Now, if relationships only depended on love, that silence wouldn't matter so much. But relationships depend on something quieter, emotional safety. The feeling that your inner world can exist without being laughed at, dismissed, or misunderstood. When that safety begins fading, people often stop sharing before they stop loving. Read that again in your own mind. They stop sharing before they stop loving. And that's why giving up can feel so confusing, because your heart hasn't completely left. It has simply become exhausted from carrying conversations that never found words. Still, this isn't the moment where everything falls apart. In many cases, it's the moment where something unexpected is about to reveal itself. Because the real reason people walk away often has almost nothing to do with the last argument. And once you see it, you'll never look at love the same way. Have you noticed something strange? Sometimes the moment you finally decide to stop chasing her, she begins moving closer. Not dramatically, not like the movies. It's smaller than that. Her texts become a little warmer. She asks questions she hadn't asked in weeks. She notices the little things again. And you're left wondering, why now? It's tempting to believe people only value what they're about to lose. Sometimes that's true, but often, something much quieter is happening beneath the surface. Many relationships slowly become predictable, not comfortable. Predictable. There's a difference. Comfort feels safe. Predictability can slowly make people stop paying attention. Think about the first weeks you knew her. She listened carefully. You noticed every smile. She wondered what you were thinking. You wondered what she meant by one simple message. Neither of you had certainty. Oddly enough, that uncertainty made both of you more present. Then life happened. Work, bills, stress, family. The relationship didn't suddenly become bad. It simply became familiar. And familiarity has a strange habit. Sometimes it makes us stop seeing the person while still seeing the role. She becomes my girlfriend. You become my boyfriend. Those words sound loving, but hidden inside them is a quiet danger. You stop discovering each other. You begin assuming. You think you already know how she'll react. She thinks she already knows what you'll say. Little surprises disappear. Curiosity fades. Not because love is gone, because attention drifted somewhere else. There's something I've noticed over the years. The strongest couples aren't always the ones who love the hardest. They're often the ones who stay curious the longest, curious enough to ask, "What happened today?" and actually wait for the real answer. Curious enough to notice a different tone in someone's voice. Curious enough to ask twice when the first answer sounds rehearsed. Because let's be honest, most people don't reveal what's really bothering them the first time they're asked. Neither do you. When someone says, "I'm fine," it's amazing how many conversations end right there. But sometimes, "I'm fine," means, "I don't know how to explain this," or "I'm afraid you'll think I'm weak," or even, "I've already convinced myself you won't understand." Those aren't lies. They're protective walls. And everyone builds them eventually. Maybe even you. Maybe especially you. You learned somewhere along the way that staying strong meant carrying things alone. So you became reliable, calm, steady. The man everyone could lean on, and people admired you for it. But admiration doesn't always feel like closeness. Sometimes, the stronger everyone believes you are, the lonelier you become, because nobody checks on the man who always seems okay. You know what's interesting? Many men don't actually want someone to solve their problems. They want someone to notice that they're carrying them. There's a huge difference. One asks for rescue. The other asks for connection. And connection rarely begins with perfect words. It begins with presence. With someone sitting beside you, without rushing to fix anything. Now imagine her for a moment. Not as the woman who disappointed you, not as the woman who confused you, just as another human being. She has fears too. Sometimes they're completely different from yours. Sometimes they're surprisingly similar. She might have been wondering whether your silence meant you stopped loving her, while you were wondering why she stopped asking. Neither of you meant to create distance, yet both of you kept protecting yourselves from pain. It's almost ironic. The walls we build to avoid heartbreak can quietly create it. But don't mistake this for a reason to ignore your own hurt. Some relationships become unhealthy. Some people repeatedly cross boundaries. Some promises are broken too many times. Choosing to leave can sometimes be the healthiest decision. This isn't about convincing yourself to stay no matter what. It's about making sure you're walking away from reality, not from a misunderstanding that was never given the chance to become a conversation. Because before you decide she stopped loving you, there's one question almost no man asks himself, and the answer to that question changes everything that comes after. There's a quiet question that almost never gets asked, not because it's difficult, because it's uncomfortable. What story have I been telling myself that I never gave her the chance to correct? Sit with that for a second. Not every fear is imaginary. Not every doubt is wrong. But sometimes, after enough disappointments, the mind begins filling in the blanks. It becomes very good at predicting rejection before it happens. You notice she replies a little later than usual. Your thoughts start moving. She's losing interest. She forgets to mention something about her day. She doesn't trust me anymore. She seems distracted over dinner. I'm not important to her now. Maybe, but maybe not. Our minds don't like uncertainty. They'd rather create an answer, even a painful one, than sit with not knowing. That's one reason relationships become so complicated. You're not only responding to what she did, you're responding to what you believe it means. And those are not always the same thing. I remember speaking with a man who was convinced his relationship was over. He described every detail. She laughed less. She texted less. She seemed distant. "I know she's checked out," he said. Then I asked him something simple. "When was the last time you told her you were afraid of losing her?" He smiled. Not because it was funny, because he realized he never had. He had shown frustration. He had shown disappointment. He had shown silence. But fear, never. Somewhere along the way, he learned that admitting fear made him weak. So instead, he acted stronger than he felt. And strength, when it hides everything, can become another kind of loneliness. Think about that. The version of you she has been responding to might not be the version you actually are. She can only respond to what you've allowed her to see. That doesn't make everything your responsibility. Relationships are shared. They require effort from both people, but it does raise a difficult possibility. Maybe she never realized how close you were to giving up, not because she didn't care, because you became so good at pretending you could handle everything. There's another moment that happens more often than people admit. You're lying in bed. She's asleep beside you. The room is quiet. You want to say something. Anything. "I miss us. I've been hurting. I'm scared we're drifting." The words reach your throat and stop. You tell yourself you'll say it tomorrow. Tomorrow becomes next week. Next week becomes another argument. And eventually the silence begins speaking louder than either of you. This doesn't happen because people stop loving. Often it happens because they're terrified that honesty will make things worse. Ironically, honesty is usually what gives love one last chance to breathe. Not perfect honesty, not dramatic speeches, just the kind that sounds human. "I don't know what's happening between us, but I don't want to lose what we had." There's something deeply disarming about those words. Not because they guarantee a happy ending, nothing can guarantee that, but because they replace guessing with truth. And truth, even when it's painful, is easier to build from than imagination. Now, don't confuse vulnerability with pleading. They're very different. Pleading says, "Please don't leave me, I'll become whoever you want." Vulnerability says, "This is what I've been feeling, and I wanted you to know before either of us made a decision we'd regret." One gives away your self-respect. The other protects it. That difference matters more than most people realize, because love isn't sustained by pretending to be unbreakable. It's sustained when two imperfect people slowly become safe enough to stop pretending. And yet, even if both people care, there's one hidden habit that quietly destroys connection more than shouting, more than distance, and sometimes even more than betrayal. Almost nobody notices it while it's happening, but once you do, you'll start seeing it everywhere. It doesn't usually begin with a cruel word, or a slammed door, or one unforgettable argument. It begins with something so ordinary that most couples never notice it. They stop giving each other the benefit of the doubt. That sounds small, almost too small to matter, but watch what happens. She forgets to call. Instead of thinking, "Maybe something came up," your mind whispers, "I knew it. I'm not a priority anymore." You come home quieter than usual. Instead of wondering if you've had a difficult day, she thinks, "He's pulling away again." Neither of you has actually asked a question. You've already reached a conclusion. And once conclusions arrive before conversations, something changes. The relationship slowly becomes a courtroom. Every little mistake becomes evidence. Every misunderstanding becomes another file added to the case. You start remembering everything that supports your fear. The times she didn't listen, the promises she forgot, the moments you felt alone. Your brain is trying to protect you. That's what it does. It searches for patterns. The problem is, when we're hurting, we often notice only the patterns that confirm the pain we're already expecting. There was a man who once told me, "I don't think she appreciates anything I do." I asked him why he believed that. He listed 10 moments without hesitation. 10. Then I asked another question. "When was the last time she thanked you?" He looked down. After a long silence, he smiled a little. "Yesterday. And the week before." "She did then too." His memory hadn't disappeared. His pain had simply become louder than his gratitude. That can happen to any of us. Pain has a way of turning the volume up until it drowns out everything else. But there's another side to this. She may be doing exactly the same thing. She remembers the nights you seemed distracted, the times you forgot something important, the conversations you ended too quickly, not because she's trying to build a case against you, because hurt naturally searches for explanations. That's why two people can honestly believe they're the one trying harder. They're both looking through the window of their own disappointment, and disappointment narrows vision. Here's something I've learned after watching many relationships struggle. Most people don't actually want perfection. They want reassurance, not constant reassurance, just enough to know that they still matter, that they're still chosen, that yesterday's argument didn't erase today's love. Sometimes reassurance isn't spoken at all. It's making coffee for someone without being asked. It's remembering how they take it. It's reaching for their hand while walking through a crowded parking lot. It's looking up from your phone when they start telling a story. Tiny things, almost invisible. Yet those moments quietly answer a question every human being carries. Do I still matter to you? The answer is rarely found in grand romantic gestures. It's hidden inside ordinary Tuesdays, inside 5-second moments that nobody posts online. The strange thing is, people often wait until they're on the edge of losing each other before they start noticing those moments again. Almost as if love becomes visible only when it's about to disappear. But it doesn't have to be that way. Sometimes, before giving up. All that's needed is one conversation where neither person is trying to win, only trying to understand. That doesn't mean the relationship will survive. Sometimes the healthiest ending is still an ending. Respect matters. Trust matters. Repeated disrespect shouldn't be ignored in the name of hope. But many relationships don't end because love vanished. They end because two good people slowly became strangers while believing the other person had already stopped caring. And before you make a decision that can't easily be undone, there is one final realization. It's the realization that often separates regret from peace, not because it tells you whether to stay, but because it finally answers the question you've been carrying all along. Before you walk away, ask yourself one question. Not whether you still love her. You probably wouldn't have stayed this long if the answer were simple. Ask yourself this instead. If this relationship ended tomorrow, what would I wish I had said while I still had the chance? That question has a quiet honesty to it. It doesn't ask you to ignore your pain. It doesn't ask you to fight for someone who repeatedly disrespects you. It simply asks whether silence has become more comfortable than truth. Because years from now, the memories that return aren't always the loud ones. They're often the quiet moments, the conversation you kept postponing, the hug you almost gave, the message you typed and deleted, the night you looked over at her while she was reading, wanting to tell her how much she meant to you, and deciding it could wait until tomorrow. Life has a way of reminding us that tomorrow isn't a promise, not in relationships, not anywhere. I've noticed something about regret. People rarely regret every relationship that ended. Sometimes ending a relationship is an act of self-respect. Sometimes it's the beginning of healing. But they often regret the version of themselves that stayed silent, the version that assumed, the version that hoped the other person would somehow read what was never spoken. No one can. Not consistently. Even people who love us deeply cannot hear words we never say. That doesn't mean you need a perfect speech. You don't. In fact, the most meaningful conversations are usually a little messy. You pause. You search for words. You admit you don't know exactly how to explain it. And somehow, that honesty feels more real than any polished sentence ever could. Imagine sitting across from her. No anger, no rehearsed arguments, no scorekeeping. Just two people who once chose each other. You look at her and say, I don't know where we go from here. Maybe we're stronger than I think. Maybe we're not. But before either of us gives up, I want you to know what's been happening inside me. Then, you tell the truth. Not the version designed to make her feel guilty. The version designed to let her finally see you. Maybe she listens. Maybe she cries. Maybe she tells you she's been carrying the same fears. That happens more often than people expect. Or maybe She tells you she's no longer able to continue. That possibility is painful, but it's also clear. And clarity, even when it hurts, is kinder than spending years wondering, what if I had just been honest? One conversation cannot repair every relationship. Some wounds are too deep. Some trust has been broken too many times. Some people simply grow in different directions. Accepting that isn't failure, it's maturity. Love isn't measured only by how long two people stay together. Sometimes it's measured by how respectfully they treated each other when life asked them to make impossible choices. And if the relationship does have another chance, it won't come from pretending nothing happened. It will come from two people choosing curiosity over assumptions, courage over silence, presence over pride. Because beneath almost every lasting relationship is one simple habit. Two people keep letting each other be known, again and again, even after misunderstandings, even after disappointment, even after the excitement of the beginning has faded. So before you give up, don't ask only whether she's worth fighting for. Ask something just as important. Have you truly allowed yourself to be seen? Because sometimes the ending you fear is actually the beginning of the most honest relationship you've ever had, whether that's with her or, at last, with yourself.